Under California's radiant sunshine, a once bright tale of freedom and self-determination has taken a darker, more complex turn. Prince Harry and Meghan, once celebrated as courageous pioneers forging their own path, now find themselves surrounded by persistent rumors that refuse to fade. The story they presented to the world was straightforward. Escape the constraints of royal duty. Step away from relentless media scrutiny and build a new life through their own efforts. But that narrative has begun to unravel. What was once seen as an inspiring act of independence has given way to skepticism, serious doubt from figures far more influential than the usual tabloid critics. The first signs of trouble appeared when their fortune appeared to skyrocket soon after they renounced royal funding. Their public statements painted a portrait of grit and self-reliance. No Duchy of Cornwall income, no royal stipends, no secret subsidies. Yet, within months, their lifestyle told a different story. A lavish Montecito estate, multi-million-dollar security detail, luxury vehicles, and designer wardrobes, all at odds with the image of starting anew from scratch. Even their most loyal admirers began to ask, who's really footing the bill? In Hollywood, the very executives who once scrambled to invest in the Sussex brand are now quietly expressing doubts. Spotify publicly distanced itself, unimpressed by the results. Netflix's enthusiasm has noticeably cooled. Meghan's high-profile ventures repeatedly failed to gain traction, while Harry's best-selling memoir, though impactful, can hardly sustain a life of private jets and gated mansions indefinitely. The lucrative contracts once meant to secure their independence now appear unstable, fueling speculation that their financial foundation might rest on something far murkier. That's where the whispers deepen, into the territory of financial scrutiny. Analysts aren't chasing gossip. They're following irregularities. Talk of offshore accounts, unexplained transactions, and opaque donations has begun circling the Sussexes' name like a gathering storm. The irony is striking. The very charitable projects and social initiatives that Harry and Meghan once championed as symbols of their integrity are now being examined under the harshest light. The mere suggestion that their philanthropic work might be entangled in questionable money flows carries enormous reputational and potentially legal risk. Meghan's meticulously crafted image as a global influencer and Hollywood power figure is also beginning to fracture. Once hailed as a visionary cultural voice, she now faces criticism for overpromising and under-delivering. The sheen of her brand, built on ambition and aspiration, is starting to dull, revealing the widening gap between the story they told and the reality they now inhabit. What was once a promise has now become a liability. Instead of being seen as the inspiring icon she aspired to be, Meghan is increasingly labeled a magnet for controversy, a figure who seems to attract chaos more easily than meaningful achievement. As for Harry, those close to him describe a man simmering with anger and frustration. The independence he fought so hard for has become a gilded cage. Friends say he's quick to lose his temper, struggling with the reality that freedom hasn't brought him peace, but rather an even harsher spotlight and heavier judgment. The same man who once sought to protect his family from the glare of the British tabloids now finds himself living a real-life drama far more intense than anything the press could invent. Only this time, the storytellers aren't journalists, they're investigators, financial auditors, and government officials, people unmoved by royal titles, emotional interviews, or public sympathy, and above it all hangs the palace's silence. Prince William, who seldom reveals emotion, is said to be weary of the endless spectacle. Each headline from California, each new rumor of official scrutiny surrounding his brother, casts another shadow over the monarchy. He doesn't need to say a word. The growing distance between the brothers speaks volumes. What once might have been the possibility of reconciliation has hardened into exhaustion, even quiet resentment, toward the unending turmoil. The spotlight Harry and Meghan once courted has turned unforgiving. It's no longer about admiration, it's about interrogation. The deeper observers dig, the more troubling the questions become. Their public image was built on honesty and transparency. Yet when it comes to finances, the very topic that could dispel all doubts, they remain silent. And that silence grows heavier with time, as if they themselves know that the truth might not withstand scrutiny. This is where the story crosses from celebrity drama into something far more serious. The whispers aren't fading, they're spreading. And the world is no longer dismissing them as tabloid chatter. It's asking the question that could unravel everything. Where is the money really coming from? At the center of the storm lies their lifestyle, a contradiction too stark to ignore. Publicly, they present themselves as self-made underdogs who walked away from royal privilege. In reality, their existence mirrors that of Hollywood's elite, the sprawling Montecito mansion worth tens of millions, the rotating fleet of luxury cars, the couture fashion on display at every event, and the lavish holidays that exude extravagance. These aren't the hallmarks of two people rebuilding from the ground up. They're the unmistakable signs of a couple living well beyond the image they've tried to project, means they claim to have. In Los Angeles, the same executives who once scrambled to align themselves with Meghan's brand are beginning to shift uneasily. When she first entered the Hollywood scene, she was marketed as the next cultural powerhouse, someone capable of commanding influence, bringing credibility to major projects and seamlessly blending royal prestige with Hollywood glamour. But in practice, her ventures have fallen short of expectations. Behind the glossy press releases, whispers have grown louder about documentaries that never materialized, partnerships that quietly dissolved, and proposals that seemed driven more by ambition than actual vision. Instead of becoming a commanding icon, Meghan has become the story herself, a magnet for headlines rather than a maker of meaningful work. In an industry that prizes measurable results over reputation, being labeled more drama than deal is a wound that cuts deep. Harry hasn't escaped the fallout either. While his memoir made global waves, its success was fleeting. A lucrative book deal, no matter how sensational, offers only temporary reward, not long-term stability. Critics now argue that Harry has yet to establish a lasting identity beyond his discontent. For years, his public narrative revolved around breaking free from the monarchy's shadow. But now, with no institution left to rebel against, his story risks losing direction. Insiders describe a man increasingly restless and irritable, struggling with the realization that the independence he demanded has morphed into another kind of confinement, one defined by expectation and scrutiny. The financial concerns surrounding the couple carry far more gravity than mere image issues. Investigators don't appear without cause. Their involvement suggests that discrepancies exist, signals that go beyond the noise of bad press. Mentions of offshore accounts, suspicious donations, and irregular financial transfers point to potential complications that could have serious implications. When tied to their charitable foundations, these issues take on even greater weight. Philanthropy, once their shield of virtue, now threatens to become the weapon used against them. Few things damage credibility faster than the suspicion that benevolent causes may serve as fronts for financial manipulation. Meanwhile, the royal family's silence only amplifies the scrutiny. Prince William's refusal to comment or publicly defend his brother speaks volumes. His calm composure and quiet detachment project a clear message of distance. The monarchy, built on the principles of discretion and continuity, finds itself tested each time headlines mention federal probes or financial irregularities linked to the Sussexes. Within royal circles, Harry's decisions are increasingly viewed not as bold acts of independence, but as reckless moves that jeopardize the institution's carefully maintained dignity. Even Hollywood, once their sanctuary, is showing signs of fatigue. The industry thrives on spectacle, but it's also driven by results. Executives can tolerate controversy when it's profitable, but they won't bankroll a brand that keeps generating headlines without delivering substance. Their reputations now seem to cost more than they earn. Meghan's ventures are losing their appeal, and the public's interest in Harry's personal grievances is fading fast. In an industry driven by results, whispers of underperformance are already casting doubt on their long-term value. Without major successes to back up their image, the couple risks being viewed not as visionary partners, but as liabilities. As the scrutiny intensifies, one truth grows impossible to ignore: sympathy doesn't last forever. The global audience that once cheered for their independence no longer accepts vague explanations and curated photo ops. People want clarity, proof, documentation, and answers that make the numbers align. And with each passing day that those answers remain absent, the spotlight becomes increasingly harsh. The irony is striking. The couple who once fled the glare of royal scrutiny now live beneath a microscope more unforgiving than any tabloid lens. Only this time, the observers aren't gossip writers or critics. They're investigators with the authority to turn whispers into formal charges. The question echoing across boardrooms, dinner tables, and social media feeds is deceptively simple yet deeply consequential. How are they funding it all? The public image promotes financial independence, but the math tells a different story. Book royalties, speaking engagements, and limited media deals don't begin to cover the costs of private security, luxury estates, designer wardrobes, and frequent transatlantic travel. When expenditures exceed visible income, speculation fills the void. This isn't curiosity anymore, it's about accountability. A potential federal probe is not a rumor spun by tabloids. It's a response to financial data, triggered by flagged transactions and patterns that demand scrutiny. Should investigators uncover irregularities, the fallout wouldn't stop at public embarrassment. The consequences could turn legal: audits, fines, or even criminal charges, words once unthinkable in the same breath as Duke and Duchess. The glamour of Montecito could, in an instant, be replaced by the cold reality of a courtroom. Public sentiment, once forgiving, is shifting rapidly. Conversations at dinner tables, in offices, and across social platforms increasingly circle the same concern: something doesn't add up. Even longtime supporters, once eager to defend the couple as bold reformers, now hesitate. Compassion flowed easily when their story was about breaking free from the monarchy. But compassion wanes when the narrative starts to look like manipulation of public trust. And without goodwill, even the image of victimhood, once their strongest shield, begins to crack. Behind the scenes, tensions reportedly run high. Harry's temper flares more often, while Meghan's carefully composed demeanor grows harder to maintain. The couple who once appeared untouchable now seem cornered by the very freedom they fought to claim. The couple who once built their entire image around controlling the narrative now find the camera turned back on them. No Netflix production, no Spotify series, and no memoir can rewrite the story if investigators uncover facts they'd prefer to stay buried. The fairy tale of independence has twisted into something far more sobering, a cautionary tale of ambition, image, and consequence. What happens next could determine the fate of their entire legacy. If they can demonstrate that their wealth is legitimate, transparent, and self-earned, there remains a narrow path toward redemption and restored trust. But if those whispers solidify into verifiable evidence, their carefully constructed empire won't merely fracture, it will collapse. And when it does, the same spotlight they once chased will expose every detail of their downfall without mercy. The irony is impossible to miss. The pair who fled royal life to escape constant scrutiny are now facing an even harsher glare, one unfiltered, unspinnable, and governed not by tabloids, but by truth. The question once confined to gossip columns has become a matter of public and legal curiosity, echoing louder each day. Where does the money truly come from?